Hello and welcome to the Fuel Run Recover podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Natchuk, registered dietitian, running coach, marathon runner, and mom. This season, we're breaking down running's biggest trends, hot topics, and myths, and turning them into practical nutrition and training advice you can actually use every day. Let's get into it. Hey runners, before we get into today's episode, I want to ask you a quick question. Have you ever wondered if your nutrition is actually helping your running, or is it actually holding you back? If you want to find out, I've created a brand new free resource just for you. It's called the Runner's Fueling Audit. It's a super quick checklist that's going to help you spot the signs of underfueling, low energy availability, or where the gaps in your nutrition might be that are impacting your recovery and actually slowing you down. It only takes a few minutes to go through, and by the end, you're going to know whether or not your fueling is on the right track, or if you really need to start making some changes to the way you approach your eating so you can start to feel stronger on every run, reduce your injury risk, and actually get the results that you're training so hard for. You can grab your free copy right now by clicking on the link in the show notes. Again, this is called the Runner's Fueling Audit. It's a free downloadable resource, and it's going to give you so much clarity on how you can start feeling smarter and running stronger. All right, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, and welcome everyone to this week's episode of the Fuel Run Recover podcast. I am really excited to be joined today by two fellow podcasters who you probably already know. They've been around for a super long time and have a fantastic show of their own. Zoe Rome and Kylie Van Horn from the Your Diet Sucks podcast. So hello, and thank you so much for joining me today, guys.
Pumped to be here.
Yay, excited to be back because we chatted about a year or two ago.
Exactly. So Kylie is a repeat guest here on the podcast. And now we've got her partner, Zoe, joining us as well. And we are here to dive into the wonderful world of supplements and supplement marketing and all kinds of things that they've been doing a lot of work and research on. So welcome. And I would love for you to just start by introducing yourselves. And for anybody who might not be familiar with you or your show, you can tell them all about it.
Yeah, I'm Zoe Rome. I'm the host and producer of Your Diet Sucks. I am a journalist and science communicator. I spent many years as an environmental journalist and writing for different health and fitness outlets, and sort of feel like I got an inside view of how a lot of times the media or the attention economy can distort health and wellness information. So I've long been interested in science communication and particularly how that intersects with diet and nutrition advice. And as someone that's been in eating disorder recovery for like 10 plus years at this point, I was really interested in creating a project that could both marry my journalistic and academic background with my personal experience as an athlete and just a woman in the a dearth of information out there. And I just so happen to have a best friend who is a brilliant registered dietitian nutritionist.
Yeah, and I'm Kylie Van Horn. I am an endurance sports dietitian and owner of Fly Nutrition. And we chatted last year working with just runners, triathletes, skiers, day in and day out doing the good work. You and I can relate, Stephanie. So, and I came out with my book last year, Practical Fueling for Endurance Athletes. So that's a nice resource for people that might be getting started in their own sports nutrition journey, and embarked on the journey with Zoe about 2 years ago, which has been really fun I feel like every time we do an episode, I get to learn things too. So it's kind of like continuing education for ourselves.
Well, exactly. And I think that's probably why, and I don't know if you guys have statistics on this or not, but I feel like your podcast is one of the ones that as a fellow professional, I really love because, you're going deeper into these topics and there's that research sort of journalistic take on things that is incredibly informative for me as a provider, right? I'm sure lots of your listeners are also athletes and people interested in the topic, but there's so much to learn for us who actually work in the space as well. So it's one of my favorite shows.
Oh, it's just the best thing ever to hear. And it's always so great to we do get a lot of, like, for lack of a better word, fan mail from dietitian nutritionists, from doctors, from coaches, from people who are experts. But like, even if they have the clinical background, even if they have the trainings, the certification, the academic background, I think bringing our cultural lens really helps bring the pieces together. And since Kylie has the one-on-one clinical experience, it's sort of like we start at the way macro, we look at the big picture, then we look at some specific studies, and then Kylie's able to triangulate all of that and tie it together with how this plays out on the individual human level.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the hate mail that we get is like the Gen Pop that is opposed to our view, like things that we're presenting in the topic area, that they're like, that can't be true. Like, it's
weirdly, they almost never argue with our rhetoric or are able to actually point out flaws in the logic. Usually it's they're like, listen to this podcast written by a naturopath from Whistler. Awesome, thanks. I'll give that a shot.
Exactly. And I find, like, the way that social media, like the landscape of social media, has changed in even just the last couple of years and really become about views and eyeballs and like those metrics versus anything of substance. The way, I mean, even just kind of pre-COVID, I feel like there was a lot more substance to social media and posting on social media, that like it's just gotten even crazier out there with the trends and the like stuff that you hear and the false information that's being perpetuated, because it's just whatever's going to get you the most eyeballs.
Exactly, like you said. I mean, that's backed up by the research, and it's actually distorting science communication in a tangible and measurable way, because the algorithm, like algorithmically driven social media platforms, your TikToks, your Facebooks, your Instagrams, they index really highly on what can generate an emotional response. And usually things that generate the most emotive response are things that spark fear and outrage. Good science communication very rarely sparks fear or outrage. It usually sparks something closer to, huh. And so almost anytime I think that people notice they're having an emotional reaction to something they see on social media, I think that's a really good sign to pause and slow down on an individual level. On sort of a cultural and systems level, I think this is pretty bad because it incentivizes all the wrong types of communication. It incentivizes types of science communication that end up being way overly prescriptive. It incentivizes emotion over facts and logic. And it ends up skewing things so much so that, I mean, and increasingly people are getting more health and fitness advice from social media and from the internet at the time that that information out there is becoming less and less reliable. And these algorithms, as they learn what you're interested in, what your eyeballs are drawn to, will just continue to feed that back to you. And even now with AI, we're seeing those bubbles, instead of being burst, being reinforced by these LLMs that are really highly, that are created to be solipsistic and agree with you and are incentivized to keep you chatting with them for longer rather than fact checking you or telling you to get the heck offline and touch some grass.
Totally. Yeah. And it's just like, it's funny that I just had this conversation with a client this morning about, how just boring and mundane your good nutrition is, right? Like just like the day in, day out of healthy eating, like it's not exciting and it's so routine that you sometimes feel like you're not really doing anything, because it shouldn't feel like a tremendous amount of work. And that's just so vastly different than what social media promotes or what the purpose of social media messaging often is. And it's a very strange space to operate in right now.
Yeah, I mean, those things almost run counter to each other. And even in more traditional media that's increasingly incentivized by clicks and making everything feel urgent, it's like, new study, coffee causes Alzheimer's. And like, okay, it'll be some like dumb rat study with like 3 male rat participants. And when you actually unpack it, it's like, okay, when you inject coffee straight into their brains, things happen. So like not how people consume coffee. And it gets spun up in a lot of time media that's less incentivized to check facts and slow down than to have grabby headlines and try to like go for your gut or pull on your heartstrings. And I mean, essentially the way that algorithmically driven media works runs counter to actual science communication, which is oftentimes very boring, oftentimes not emotional, oftentimes extremely slow, and there's very little novel that happens. Like I can count on my hand the amount of like truly novel discoveries that we have in the way that I think we would think about them or the way they get represented on social media, whereas the majority of evidence is adding nuance and or opening up new questions for us to explore rather than like groundbreaking study shows ketones make you the best triathlete ever.
Well, that's where it gets hard with our episodes sometimes, right? Because we bring it back to, okay, we're going to present you with this information. You can make a decision. But a lot of times people are like, but I want to be told, like, this is the thing that I need to do. And I'm like, well, here's the thing. Or the things that have science behind them are boring. Yeah. So you have to make that decision based on what we're presenting you here.
I want to be told what to do unless it's the thing that I've already decided I don't want to.
Yes, 100%. And too, like, and this is often like the filter that I run things through just in my own practice, right? Is like, I read a study or I look at a headline, read an article, whatever. It's like, okay, filter this through. Does this actually change what I am going to tell my clients to do day to day, right? Like this one study, does this actually change my recommendations for people? And like you said, Zoe, sometimes the answer of information kind of add on, or in this specific situation, here's something different that we might want to try. But I can't think of anything that is like totally turned my entire practice.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, like I think there's just very few instances where genuinely novel information becomes available in how you actually work one-on-one with individuals. And you guys know this better than me working one-on-one with clients, but it's so rare that the populations that are studied end up resulting in something that's not just descriptive, but actually prescriptive of like, we have this huge population and we need to change how we apply the science tomorrow. That's really the exception.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so I mean, when it comes to supplements, I think that that's like a really good area of nutrition where a lot of times the hype and the marketing outweighs the science and the age old question of like, is this a product that everyone should be taking, everyone needs to be taking? And one of the reasons that we wanted to connect into this episode together was talk about marketing in the supplement industry and what has kind of gone on with all of the hype, and especially now with like social media, that kind of stuff. So, what are some of the things that you've found in looking at this that has really brought it to light for you?
I feel like, when we see the pro athletes, the influencers, like essentially influencing athletes that we work with. That's where we actually get a lot of episode ideas from, because Zoe and I are running coaches as well and doing the dietitian work. I'm like, I feel like we get a lot of episode ideas from the people we work with, but we'll hear about like, did you hear about this broccoli shot called Nomeo? Like, what do you think about it? Or some random thing that like I might not have even heard about yet, but somebody else saw someone online, a runner, taking something, and they're like, should I be taking this? And I think that's part of the problem is they'll see like professional athletes taking certain things and they're like, well, I want to improve my performance, so I should probably take this too since they run super fast. And so I think that the supplement industry essentially thrives on this kind of like attention market, and they're getting a lot of clients from the internet, from the social internet side of things.
And looking at the history of it, essentially in the 90s, we decided as a country to just like not regulate supplements because we thought it'd be really cool if they could say whatever they wanted. And we just didn't hold them accountable because that's a really functional marketplace where the consumer definitely benefits. Me, it's like always starting with a really high bar of skepticism, and everyone has to calibrate their own bar. My bar is not going to be appropriate for everyone. I tend to be pretty risk adverse. I'm also an elite athlete who is like has potential to be drug tested, so really rely on third party testing to make sure that anything I would put in my body because of strict liability is checked by someone with a lab and not just me. And I think that, there's really only 5 supplements that are shown in the research to be beneficial to athletes. And even then, not every supplement is going to be useful for every athlete in every circumstance. If you're an endurance athlete, taking something that's more optimized for power may not be of ultimate benefit to you. If you're, there's a certain, not more isn't always better. Caffeine is seen in the evidence like really one of the best researched ergogenic supplements out there. You're going to hit a cap on how much benefit you're going to get out of any of these substances. And there will be diminishing returns for you and whatever shorts you're wearing. So I think that not only being a really skeptical consumer, but really understanding how you apply use cases, because just because something is seen in the research, and for audio listeners, I'm making really dramatic air quotes here, just because something is evidence-based or seen in the research or sold to you by an athlete, these companies are relying on health or kind of a vibe that's put around these products because of words that seem sciencey, or because of borrowed authority and credibility, either from language or from athletes or coaches or podcasters, whatever it is. So my bar isn't just like, well, what's the harm? Because again, as someone who might be drug tested, there is significant harm there, but also like, is this actually proven to be good? Because I do try to limit the amount of random things I put inside of myself.
Absolutely.
Otherwise.
Yes. Yeah. The broccoli
I don't
shot
know.
was a funny one. I don't know if that broccoli shot will ever really take. I just can't imagine like burping that up after. I don't know. I mean,
Ew.
maybe
Yeah.
one day I'll be proven wrong and I'll be taking broccoli shots with the rest of them. But I just, of all the things to make it taste like.
Well, I don't know about you, Stephanie, but do you get a lot of, I mean, some athletes that I work with are like, they'll come and they'll get started and they'll have like 20 different supplements they're taking. I'm just like, this is insane. Or I actually had somebody that I've been working with that had like liver enzymes that were off, and they were taking all of these like herbal supplements and things for years upon end. I was like, you should stop taking all of these things, and then we should get the liver enzymes tested again. And they like went back to normal. And people don't think about like, oh, like I'm taking this thing for this intended purpose, but then what else could this be doing to me?
Yes.
Like physiologically, or
because it says it's herbal, again, not regulated. So you could put unicorn horn on the bottle. You don't know.
wow, that would be what would that one do?
Yeah, buy the IDS unicorn supplement, or even better lactate buffering you can get from a broccoli shot. But
There we go.
not regulated, and they're using words like herbal, like natural, safe, clean, effective, whatever it is, to signal to you that like this is even though like sure we don't even have a study behind it, but what's the harm? It's organic, it's herbal. And again, there can be downsides, especially when you look at how these things interact with each other, or how these things interact with medications, or how they interact with like, if you're an athlete who's perimenopausal or menopausal. There's a lot of big question marks there that I think, like, for me, I would love to see even a college try at regulating this marketplace, or at least a little less intentional credulity on the part of athletes.
Yeah, totally. And it's interesting. I wish that I could think of it, the title of this book that I had read a couple of years ago that really got into that. And like you mentioned, sort of the cultural difference in the approach to regulation of natural health products in the US versus other parts of the world. So like even in Canada, we have not a massively different approach. Like we're not super tightly regulated, but there are some steps and sort of some kind of consumer protections in place. Like the one thing that I always say to my clients is at bare minimum, you want that label to have something called an NPN number on it. So it's a natural product number. And in Canada, it's just a very basic verification step that what is on the label is what's actually in the bottle. So to your example of so like the unicorn horn thing, right? Like if you say that this bottle has unicorn horn in it, like it won't have an NPN number if it doesn't actually have it. So I mean, again, doesn't mean that the product is safe, effective, does what it claims to do. But at the very least, you know that if you purchase a bottle of unicorn horn, you are in fact getting unicorn horn.
I mean, in the US, there is and like, this is not me trying to fearmonger and like do the attention capture thing I was just critiquing, but a shocking number of supplements in the US are either not what they claim to be. Like there are there's been, cases of natural supplements having essentially steroids in them. Yeah. Big question mark there. And of when you of cross contamination, heavy metal contamination, or of things just not straight up not being what they say they are. And that is legal. You can just do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which is wild
for a marketplace.
Yeah, totally wild. And so from your perspective and the research that you've done in this area, as a journalist, but then also as an athlete yourself and working so closely with Kylie as a dietitian and all of that, what makes endurance athletes kind of so ripe for the picking for supplement companies and for targeting of marketing? What is it about us that we're so,
we're vulnerable and we aren't aware of how vulnerable we are. A lot of people, myself included, might think we're a little smarter than we are. One of my favorite quotes from Richard Feynman is the first rule is you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool. The people who think they're the least susceptible to this type of marketing often are the most susceptible. People who think they're experts and love, I'm really up on the science and I listen to all the podcasts from all the guys who do all the cold plunges. And we're humans. We all have human psychology. What you can do is deny yourself that humanity. So we're all meeting on this even playing field. So we need to not be hard on ourselves. And because many people, bodies are an extremely vulnerable thing. Many of us are aging. Many of us live in bodies that culture has told us are unacceptable for some reason, because of gender, because of our size, because of some facet of how we show up in the world. There is this entire economy that's premised on having us feel not fundamentally okay with the meat sacks that we ride around in all the time. And someone who feels fundamentally not okay is a very easy person to sell stuff to. So if you're someone who feels vulnerable about your weight, you feel vulnerable about your athletic performance, you feel vulnerable about your aging, you feel vulnerable about your hairline, and show me a person on planet Earth that doesn't feel vulnerable about one of those things, that's where these supplement companies can sell into. They create and then they sell a problem or they sell a solution for this thing that is debatably not a problem. So what it is athletes have this vested interest, and people who do endurance sports as well tend to be pretty socioeconomically well off. There's this entire market called the worried well, which are people who are pretty healthy but are always curious about optimizing the Oura Ring users, the people who get preemptive blood tests just to check what's under the hood to see if everything's optimized, despite the fact that they have no diagnoses or symptoms that are apparent to them. That's an extremely profitable marketplace. And you don't have to be worried about all the bummer things of trying to actually do medicine for people that need it. You can just sell superfluous interventions to people who are doing pretty okay and have cash to fork over. So there's an economic component and then sort of a psychological component that makes athletes super susceptible.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, endurance athletes specifically, you can always get faster. You can always better. I think about my husband. Okay. So my husband plays recreational hockey with a bunch of his friends. They've been playing on this team that they have for almost 20 years now. I mean, they are out there enjoying themselves and doing it to the same level of recreation that I do as a runner, but they're not aspiring to that next level. Or even though we're all very recreational in our sports, there is a bit of a difference with endurance sports, because I think that there is this accessibility, whether it's real or just sort of imagined, of that next level, in a way that maybe other adult rec sports don't have.
Yeah. It's also very self-focused.
Yeah.
Endurance athletes are kind of selfish and very self-focused. And I'm an endurance athlete. I'm not saying that I'm not. But I do think it's this idea of I need to get this PR, and you're putting that pressure on yourself more than team, we are gonna come together and win this hockey game for fun or whatever. It's just I feel like there's a different mindset there in a way.
It's optimization culture. Yeah. It's competitive athletes. It's the people who are the CEOs who are cold plunging and saunaing and doing all these things to play around the margins and expending so much money on unproven interventions. And I think that optimization culture shows up a little more in individual sports, and endurance culture is increasing sort of like overlap with culture, with sort of like LinkedIn bro cold plunge culture as well. Whereas folks who are, maybe playing hockey weekends are, they're there for reasons other than just competition. There's an even stronger social component that I think helps sort of diversify their aims within the sport.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So how can like the average athlete tell the difference between a product that might be genuinely useful for them versus something that is being sold with that type of like emotional or fear-based marketing? Like where's sort of that line, and what can people do to have a filter there?
I think can follow up with even more specific clinical advice, but I would say, what problem are you trying to solve? And is it a real problem? Because a feeling is not a problem, usually that can be solved with a supplement. Again, if it's about your weight, your fertility, your presentation, your line, your productivity, if it's one of those things that we in like our culture are socialized to feel very tender about and very sensitive around, if the supplement is very clearly selling directly into that, that should raise a red flag for you immediately. And again, like, is this a demonstrated problem? I think for a lot of stuff, if people will just end up taking tons and tons of vitamins, which, like, sure, might be evidence based. If you need vitamin C solves the problem of vitamin C. If you don't need vitamin C, taking more and more vitamin C will just create a lot of bathroom related issues for you have before. And not everyone needs to self medicate like they're a 1960s sailor out on the deep sea. And we see people that always fall into this trap of like more, and I've got to optimize, and I'm taking like 90 multivitamins and all these things that they don't have a diagnosed deficiency in. And just throwing at something you're not deficient in has no better outcome. At best case is neutral. Worst case, that's additional strain on your liver. That's time and money you get back from your one wild and precious life. And it might be distracting from deeper issues like focusing on stress management, quality, social connection, the things that we know really do move the needle of like juice from the bari plant or what.
Or like, yeah, and asking yourself, what does my diet look like, right? Because no one wants to ask that question. No one wants to be like, oh, nutritionally, I could do this, but I'd rather take a supplement,
Yeah.
I think there's that question, and then there's an additional question to kind of go along with what Zoe was saying is like, what problem am I trying to solve? Am I a population that this could potentially be of benefit to because I can't get it through my diet? Maybe that's like a plant-based female. They're examining whether creatine be a good beneficial supplement for them to take. It might be something that could benefit them if they're trying to do a certain thing, like gain heat tolerance, went out training or something, and they want to try it. For the most part, I think supplements are, again, like you probably don't need it, or it doesn't really have that proposed benefit that you're hoping that it's going to, maybe, Matt.
Yeah. And I think too, like supplements are often seen as the foundation, right? Like supplements are sort of seen and like marketed as the must have. And then like the sleep and the nutrition and the proper training and all of that is like the nice to have basically, right? But it's like what products can I take first, when really, like as we know, like that pyramid should be flipped, where the sleep and the nutrition and the training all needs to be the foundation, and then the supplements are like the 1%. And that's exactly what like we learn in our education, is it's just the cherry on top versus being a requirement for success. And that's always the message that I want people to take away from conversations around supplements, or when I get interviewed about supplements, is like, okay, yeah, sure. There are certain things nowadays that we do know there's some good evidence for, creatine, caffeine, that kind of thing. But you don't have to take it. Like, even if there is evidence that it can help, you don't need it in order to still reach your goals. Like it's just that little last 1%. If you're missing the sleep, if you're missing the nutrition, if your training is all over the map, like you can focus on that first. You don't have to buy all the products on top of it.
Yeah. I think the temptation, like all like thing that is easier to commodify, like it's tough to sell sleep, though people are really giving it a solid shot
They
lately.
sure are. They
Notice
sure
people
are.
doing their best. It's tough to commodify stress management, though, again, looking at you or a ring, we're doing our best to commodify all of these things that we know are like fundamental to human flourishing. No one has yet like created Strava, but for genuine human connection, we know that like social relationships are actually great for your health, longevity, and performance. But unfortunately, I feel like the cold plunge bros aren't talking about that quite as much as I might like to see.
They tried with social media, but I mean that.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And so these things that are harder to commodify don't get the incentive to sell isn't there. And again, our like individual human psychology comes into play with novelty biases. Like we've known it forever. It's so boring. I'm so over it. But if you tell me that unicorn horn is going to take 2 minutes off my marathon PR, I'm listening because it's new. And we love the bright, shiny object. And we love the idea that this small intervention can have an outsized, because it's very compelling to think that you're doing everything right, but there's a missing puzzle piece. And for $29.99 a month, these powdered greens are going to unlock some health benefit that all of the work you put in thus far somehow hasn't, or the work that you haven't been putting in thus far somehow hasn't. And it's very tempting to believe that one product, one intervention, one lifestyle change can make the difference, when all know it's these things that aren't playing around the margins. It's the foundation, and allowing those sort of foundational benefits to accrue and compound over unsexy, really bad news here, years and years and years, rather than taking one broccoli shot and YOLOing your next marathon.
Yeah, exactly. And so lately, like what's kind of been the trends that you've seen out there, like the marketing trends, or the things that have really gone above and beyond that stand out to you?
I feel like you see this on the ground.
Maybe. I mean, I feel like the thing, and we also, oh, that's the other thing, like in our Patreon, we get like some questions about some random, like, I saw this thing online, like, what do you guys think of it?
Yeah,
and I'm like,
it's revelatory how different our algorithm. Like, I have a TikTok account that I use for research, so I basically primed it to be the most consumer of like just like this darkest cesspools of like fitness and wellness content.
Gosh,
and even so, it's frightening when someone brings something to me that I haven't seen, because I'm like, I've been living in hell and I haven't even stumbled across this yet. So where are you living right now? I think for me, one of the big ones I've been paying attention to because of research for Your Diet Sucks, and that has been popping up a lot in probably a lot of people's news feeds, is peptides, gray market Chinese peptides, which occupy this really fascinating place of not being like fully decoupled science. Like GLP-1s are a type of peptide, these little mini proteins. So it's not full unicorn horn status, but definitely are not vetted by the FDA, definitely are not a lab clean sport and USADA, and are definitely being used by athletes for all types of unproven benefit, and are being bought online for research purposes by sponsors and athletes who don't have a vested interest in remaining clean, like safer, clean and safe for sport. I think that that's one that I've been watching lately that I'm like, this one is pretty gnarly, because self-injecting is something that a few years ago I think people were a little less comfortable with, and there's a lot more like, YOLO, I'll inject myself with the Barbie peptide to see if I can get my tan a little bit crispier.
Oh my gosh, I saw that. That was so weird. I didn't even know people were...
Oh yeah. I live in the bad place on TikTok.
Yeah. So actually funny that you mentioned that one specifically. I actually remember, I mean, when I first started personal training, I was still in university to be a dietitian, and I was still personal training. And like, those were the kinds of drugs. I don't, maybe there's a nicer word for it, but drugs that,
it's an illicit since you're injecting that kind of like wax like a
yeah, but these were things that people were taking, like the bodybuilder competitors, you know, like it was at a time when here in my city, like the bikini competitions and that sort of thing were like really prominent. Like that was what everyone was into. And yeah, those types of, that was what everybody was taking for the tan and everything. So it's funny that, you know, 20 years later, this is still, you know, making a comeback.
Still going.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Still not approved.
Still not approved. Again, and that's a great piece of data for people to carry with them.
Yeah.
And, you know, again, I'm not like, we should be doing research. Again, like GLP-1s are a type of peptide. There are applications here. I would be very interested in if there are more applications and what it would look like to regulate these things so that they are safe for people to use them who might benefit from them. But if you're injecting shit that you bought the internet from China, like you got to check yourself.
Yeah. And so like, and, you know, kind of backtracking from there, like how did we get here with the popularity of the injectable peptide? Like, because it seems like this has just sort of come out of nowhere, but maybe it's just my awareness of this with the rise of GLP-1s and similar pharmaceuticals, that it seems like people wouldn't have just bought things that they had to inject off of the internet before in the way that now they are. Like, is this, has this been going on for a long time and I just didn't know about it? Or is this actually like a new thing?
Yeah, I would say the comfort with injectables is really directly attributable to the rise of GLP-1s. Now, 1 in 8 Americans are on a GLP-1, and that's a fundamentally larger slice of the population that knows how to and is presumably comfortable with self-injection. And with the rise of optimization culture, biohacking culture, and sort of the podcast bro, Peter Attia Huberman lab culture, you have this entire cadre of middle-aged gentlemen speaking with a voice of authority saying, like, I use this works, this is good. And it's been coupled with sort of this increased distrust in systems of power. You know, folks like Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. have said they want to end the war on peptides. How you can be at war with something that, you know, we are.
Well, that was the war with protein as well. So
yes, the war on protein.
So that actually makes it more popular because it casts it as this like countercultural punk rock thing of like, your doctor doesn't want you to have access to this thing that makes you super tan for some reason. They have a vested interest in you not being extremely hot in a two-piece, I guess.
Yeah.
And actually makes people more interested in it. And because there are very valid critiques of the medical system, people, particularly well people, don't feel very seen and served. So you have these affluent well people that have an unproven kind of punk rock intervention that these pod bros in San Francisco like, that you can acquire pretty cheaply and easily on the internet, and you can use in a way that sort of signals like, I'm not doing what the FDA says. Like, I'm out on the vanguard. I'm trying new things. I have a higher risk tolerance because I am, like, you know, a lot of people interested in bodybuilding and endurance sports also might have a slightly different risk calculation than the general population too. So it's a lot of these factors of like distrust in systems, you know, folks in authority, like Junior, being sort of fomented, and just like the practical thing of like a lot more people know themselves and store shit in a mini fridge than did 5 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too that like, you know, a little bit of lack of maybe knowledge around the difference between these different things. Like, you know, people are prescribed a GLP-1 or another like pharmaceutical from a company that it's been tested, and you get it at the pharmacy from a pharmacist and all of these things. And then they see like, oh, here's this website where I can get my GLP-1 medication for a lot less money. And oh, here's also these other things. Like there's a credibility that I think goes into that being just part of what they offer, that now it's like, oh, they've got the GLP-1 and also all these other products. The standard or the lack of knowledge or awareness around the testing or the research and that sort of stuff probably also plays a role. Because I'm sure people who are taking a GLP-1 like as prescribed by a physician aren't the ones that are like Googling, oh, well, what else can I inject into myself?
No,
I really like taking needles.
Yeah. these things really get flattened, right? And people have just gotten more comfortable with telehealth and like ordering random health interventions from the internet and outsourcing their trust to less traditional forms of authority. People are increasingly getting health and fitness advice not from their doctors, not from government organizations, but from other sources. And so increasingly, that's where people are putting their trust. So they're hearing these things from different places, and just the friction has been lowered. Everyone has a thing in their pocket where they can order a gray market Chinese peptide that Peter Attia recommended yesterday extremely quickly and have it like overnighted to you for research purposes only, but inexplicably that comes with a human syringe and alcohol wipe, which is fascinating. As not a researcher myself in that way. So I think that there's just all of these compounding factors that have made something that maybe would have seemed really fringe, or like in the bodybuilding community, which is a bit more risk adverse and has a different history with injecting stuff and like steroid use, has sort of lowered this bar that like the general population like 10 years ago might have been like, that seems way more like doping, or that seems way riskier, to being like, yeah, like we're all kind of used to like doing stuff to try to heal our tendons and inject ourselves and, you know, looks maxing. We're all just more familiar with the sort of like online parlance and these systems that years ago would have just made it harder to do this and harder to find out about it.
Yeah. And I wonder too, like, for some of these products that are being marketed and sold and recommended, like the people that are doing the marketing and the promotion, like, are they even really taking all of this stuff? Like, you know, is this just like, I mean, in some instances, maybe.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of folks who are true believers and they might really believe in what they're selling. We also don't know because transparency is crazy, but they're also incentivized. Like, even if the incentives aren't purely economic, again, the attention economy, like a reel where you say you didn't feel any effect from a gray market injectable that you used is not going to go viral. But one where you say it totally changed how you train and you're able to do so much more, that's going to go way more viral. So again, and there's going to be survivorship bias. We're only going to hear stories of people who do feel that it worked. And placebo effect is extremely strong. If you spent a lot of money on something and then injected yourself with it, your brain is going to be very highly incentivized to say, oh yeah, this healed my Achilles tendonitis. When was it that? Was it the rest? Was it the PT you were doing? It's really hard to say. And oftentimes we're not the most reliable narrators of our own experience when it comes to these interventions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like you, I'm sure both of you are, you know, flooded with requests in your inbox from companies who want you to collaborate with them and promote their products and do marketing and whatever to sell their stuff. And like, you know, my podcast and my social media presence is very small beans compared to, you know, some of the heavy hitters out there. So I can only imagine what the financial gain is when it comes to like influencer marketing for some of these products. That makes you wonder, like, yeah, are you just Jennifer Aniston on the shampoo commercial?
Well, it's kind of like, I mean, even dietitians in this space too, like our colleagues are partnering with like supplement companies and things like that. And I mean, I don't even do that with like sports nutrition products. I'm like, I want to be kind of neutral. So, because I don't think that one product is going to be like the best choice for every person out there.
Yes.
So I'm even hesitant to be like, yeah, like I want to recommend this brand or that brand only. So people ask me like, do you have your discount code for this thing? And I'm like, I don't have one. And they're like, why not? Because I want to help you out. And I'm like, it's fine. Like, I'm going to make $2. Like, I don't care. I'd rather you would choose something that's going to work for you.
Yeah, I think always being really like having a high degree of skepticism anytime you see the words link in bio or an affiliate code. And we are reliant on partner money because we don't work for free, and we're professional women who have like dogs and homes and husbands to support, unfortunately. So we have like taken the step of publishing our code of advertising ethics on our website because it is a murky water to navigate, but we have really strict boundaries around partners not being able to dictate content, not being able to vet anything that we say, and also being clear that just because we partner with someone and because we have an ad read on our podcast It's not a personal endorsement. It's an ad read. They gave us money. We're saying you should try this product. That's how an ad works, but it's not like trying to explicitly lend our personal credibility, because as a journalist, that would be hugely inappropriate. And as a practitioner, even more hugely inappropriate. But things have become so muddied online. And again, companies have every incentive to buy into this economy. Influencers have every incentive, because I think we can say from firsthand experience, trying to make a living off of professionally dunking on supplement brands that would otherwise like to give you money is a poor way to try to fund your Australian Shepherd's, like exorbitant lifestyle.
Yeah. And like, you look at that landscape and like, okay, you're watching television, right? You think back to like when you're a kid and you've got the TV on and you've got the show and you've got the advertisement, and you know the difference very clearly between the content you're watching, the TV show that you're watching, and the commercial, right? And now it's just gotten so messy, and it's just everything is so ingrained together, like the content and the product placement and the advertisement. Like if anybody watches like HGTV, do you guys have HGTV in the US, or is that just Canadian?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So you're watching HGTV and they've got a segment like worked into the program where they're like doing this thing on their banking app and talking about how like easy and great it is. And I find it's painful to watch, truly. But like it's that where now it's like this endorsement from that person, even though it's an advertisement, like it's a commercial, but within the program that you're watching, like it's not the same as it used to be.
Right. And it's intentional. They want your fences to be lower. And I feel really protective of our audience in this way, which is why I like so clearly demarcate when we're doing an ad, because we talk about really vulnerable stuff. Like, I'll be darned if I try to commodify talking about like recovering from an eating disorder, or trying to commodify Kylie talking one-on-one with patients and then just trying to sell that back to people with a code, which is why we really like, again, we have ads, but we say, this is an ad, and it's really clear what you're hearing, rather than like trying to weave in like, oh yes, and I was really struggling until I took Nomeo as like part of the segment. And I think that, again, the reason that happens is because these know that it's effective, but I just feel really, again, protective of our audience, and feel that like pretty clearly crosses a line in terms of someone being able to both piggyback on my hard-earned authority, and again, capitalize on the fact that when we're talking about sensitive stuff, when we're talking about personal experience, people are building a real relationship with us. And the way we honor that is by not trying to immediately commodify it and sell it to some company that doesn't have their best interests at heart.
Yeah. And I mean, I think like we've talked about, the basics are not sexy, right? Getting enough sleep. Like, yes, it's hard to like sell that to people. And I remember saying this so many years ago, like nobody makes money while you're sleeping. Like when you're actually asleep for those hours, nobody is making money off of you. So what is the benefit to promote sleep for most companies, unless you're selling the pillows? But like,
well, there are those companies.
yeah. And hey, you know what? A good pillow, like it does matter, but the basics and the fundamentals are not sexy or exciting. They're just like the day in and day out of living life, right? And showing up and just being an adult. And social media comes in and distorts that a lot. So the marketing around what's necessary, like, how does social media distort athletes' perception of what's necessary for performance, like with all of this bombardment of like influencer content and advertisements and now AI and all of that?
Yeah, I think, again, it's just understanding sort of weak, like cognitive distortions that we're all susceptible to. Novelty bias, right? Like we all know we should be getting good sleep, but lo and behold, when like a new shiny object is dangled in front of me on social media about this new supplement or this new device that's going to help me optimize it, that's always going to be more compelling than the stuff that we know works. And we, again, because we a lot of times form parasocial relationships with the athletes, with the influencers that we're following, any recommendation they give, even if we know it's compromised, even when we know it's incentivized, it's still going to read as more authoritative to us because we've established a connection. So they're commodifying that relationship that you've built with them. And again, any like bright, shiny new object or anything super flashy or that can really gin up a strong emotive response is going to, like, the algorithm is going to throw gasoline on that fire. So almost necessarily, I would say, like, just really be skeptical of the things you're seeing on social media, because very rarely is the true incentive, this thing works and I make no money off of it. Because if it was, then Instagram would just be people sleeping, which would be awesome.
Yeah. I think the hard part though is if people feel stuck, like they don't feel like they have a medical professional that's like helping them, or like they feel like they've tried everything and they don't know where to go next. So it like I can see how people get enticed by certain things on social media if they feel like they're stuck with something, or maybe they actually have dialed a lot of things in and they still have this like one thing and they like can't figure it out. And so that's where they go maybe and turn to. I'm not saying that I have like another answer, but I do feel like that is a reasoning why people are why they gravitate towards that sort of thing.
It meets a super real need. People need connection, especially around vulnerable stuff. People want to feel seen and heard. And when, like, again, in our broken healthcare system, a lot of people don't get that from their medical providers in the way that they want. When, Gwyneth Paltrow offers me that on TikTok, absolutely, I want to buy whatever powder she's selling me.
Yeah. Yeah. And two, I mean, people are just so maxed out, right? Like with their time and with their energy and with like juggling so many things that, and, Kylie and I both know this so well being practitioners, like change is hard. Like health behavior change takes time and it takes learning, and there's a learning curve. Like cooking more of your own meals and eating more fruits and vegetables and understanding how to reach your protein goals and eating more often throughout your busy workday. Like a lot of these things that we work with clients on, it's work. And even just helping people develop healthier relationships with food. It's not just here's your meal plan and follow it, but like we have to really start talking about why you eat the way that you do and what your fears are around making changes. Like we are asking people to do a lot of work with the recommendations that we would give, and it is so much easier to just order a bottle of pills off the internet.
Yeah, right. And like you said, people are busy and a lot of these things feel outside of people's sphere of control. Again, we don't have an amazing, perfect food system. We don't have an amazing, perfect healthcare system. People are parents and partners and they're doing a lot and juggling a lot. And a lot of these things feel and even are outside of our control. And what a lot of these training plans, meal plan, like the more not like working with a dietitian meal plan, but fringier meal plans, these, cold plunge, miracle in a pill interventions, what they promise you is the illusion of control, that in a chaotic universe where as a mom, you barely get enough sleep because you're providing for 3 kids and your partner travels all the time and you're, working a job and a half and inflation is insane. Like that is really hard. Maybe those things are a lot outside of your control. Well, this green powder, you can buy it and you can take it every day. And it gives you the illusion that you can wrest control back into your own sphere, even if a lot of times it sort of serves as a distraction from the places where you could exercise agency that actually matter.
Yeah. Yeah. So in this social media, AI, marketing, like just this absolute like chaotic world that we are living in right now, what, from your perspective, like what can athletes do to still like navigate this space, not have to just check out of social media entirely and not look at it, but like how can people coexist with all of this and like not let it sort of rattle them or make them always feel like they're less than and not doing enough because they're not buying all the things? And yeah, just like have that happy, healthy relationship with food and exercise and their screen time to still, reach their goals and perform well, but not get sucked in.
Yeah, I mean, I feel this deeply because I deleted my social media this year because I struggled to navigate this. And like, again, I am an expert and I study this stuff, and it is still really hard to put into practice in a way that I felt like actually aligned with my values and made me happy. But I think my number one piece of advice would be, if you notice that you're having a feeling, that is the most important data point that you can pay attention to. Anytime you have the sense like, this is making me feel like I'm not enough. This is making me feel like I need something I don't have. This is making me feel old. This is making me feel like my body's not correct. This is making me feel like I'm insufficiently feminine or masculine or whatever gender presentation I've, been socialized to prioritize in my life. This is making me feel like I'm not productive and I don't have enough money and I'm not fast enough. Just paying attention, especially if you feel fear, you feel insufficient, or you feel angry. I think those are the three big feelings that if you are feeling that in response to something you see online, A, it's almost certainly not science, and B, it is almost certainly marketing. So fear and anger, especially the way that those operate in the brain, lower your defenses and make it harder for you to think critically. So note that, and then re-engage with your critical thinking skills, because I don't think the answer is to log out of Instagram and throw your phone into the ocean. I think it's to pay attention to your own response to these systems so you can decide what it looks like to navigate them according to your values.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's okay though also to something and then get curious about it, Like I think that is actually one of the cooler things about, like if somebody asks us a question in our Patreon, it's like they're not necessarily like going and taking this new thing right away, but they're like, what have you guys seen about this thing? Like I think it's okay to like ask yourself like, oh, where did this come from? Like what is there any research behind this? I've never heard about it, and getting more curious about it. And then, maybe we'll do an episode on it too, because we do try to wade through the science and the history and those sorts of things on these different kind of trending topics. So I think that would be like in conjunction with what Zoe's saying too.
Yeah, and I love that too. I mean, like you described, Kylie, like, and also having a place that you can ask questions, right? Like having a dietitian or like, a mentor in this space, whatever that looks like for you, having a place that you can go to say, hey, what do you think about this? Or have you seen this? And have that conversation. Because yeah, there is sometimes useful and good products out there, right? Like this is not to say that all companies and all marketing and advertisement, like we've all seen an ad for something and bought it and it's been fantastic in our lives, right? But it's more so to, just like stop and think. The other thing that I would add to that is like use the mute or not interested or, unfollow button like nobody's business. Like use it every single day, every single time you're scrolling. Like tell the algorithm the stuff that you don't want to see, right? If you don't want to see advertisements for weight loss products, if you don't want to see advertisements for things that make you feel bad about yourself, like, for me, a big one has been, this is totally off topic, but like negative parenting content, like parenting content where it's like people who have they're trying to be humorous, but like they're not being very kind towards like raising children, and you see like it quickly becomes this like very negative mindset around having young kids and the quirky things that they do. When I see content like that, immediately not interested, because it just I don't want to go down that rabbit hole of not feeling very positively about my parenting experience. So things like that, like just get rid of it, get it out of your space. You don't need to see what you don't want to see on there.
This is a Kylieism, but she always talks about treating your social media diet like you do your diet, and you want to edit, you want to curate, you want to be intentional about your inputs. And I think that, again, in the way that people can sometimes be pretty vigilant around how they eat, like your attention is a precious and finite resource, and you should treat it accordingly, because you do become what you see in a lot of cases. So being really intentional about what you expose yourself to, particularly repeatedly, I think is a great way to be a little more in control of what you become and who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. And there is wonderful, positive, self-affirming content out there. You just have to like sort through all the other stuff and find it, right?
Lots of great dog content out there.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. All right. Well, thank you so much, Zoe and Kylie, for spending some time with me this afternoon. I really appreciate your thoughts and your expertise and your research and everything that you put into the work that you do and joining me here. Is there anything else that you want to leave the listeners with today before we wrap up? And then, of course, let everyone know where they can find you and follow you if they don't already.
Yeah, I would say follow us at Your Diet Sucks Pod on Instagram. And we also have a Patreon where we publish a blog post every week and answer questions for folks. And a lot of it is totally free for folks to come and enjoy and hang out and vibe with other community members and to listen to Your Diet Sucks wherever you're listening to this.
Wonderful, wonderful. And Kylie, what about yourself?
I mean, usually the takeaway for everyone out there is to we're not saying no to no ever to a supplement or no ever to whatever topic we're talking about. But I think, through our conversation here and any conversations we have on our podcast, we just want people to ask their own questions and be able to think about things and hopefully not just see a marketing ad and be the person that's like, this is going to be the magic unicorn horn that solves everything for me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Wonderful. All right. Well, it was so nice to chat with both of you and catch up. And all right, everyone who's listening today, thank you so much for tuning in and spending time with us. And we'll see you back here next week. Bye for now. The information on this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not to be used or relied upon for the diagnosis or treatment of any health condition. This information does not create a client-practitioner relationship and should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice.